So, Busher, it's good to be back in the studio. Valentine's Day has just come and gone. How did that go down for you? I know it's usually a busy time for you and me.
Could have been better if my balls weren't so hairy.
Even when I knew it was coming, I still got nothing. Well, funny you say that because thankfully this podcast is brought to you by MANSCAPED.com. Manscaped is dedicated to helping you level up your full body grooming routine, Busher. They've forever changed the grooming game with the Perfect Package 4.0. It's the perfect package for your perfect package. I wish I hadn't said that. The Perfect Package 4.0 kit comes with the Essential Lawnmower 4.0, which is a waterproof, cordless body trimmer and a ton of other liquid formulations to round out your grooming routine.
This is the best trimmer on the market for those of you in need of a chest shave. Their fourth generation trimmer features a cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to the advanced skin-safe technology pioneered by Manscaped.
Inside the Perfect Package, you'll also find the Manscaped Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, an anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer, because we know how painful chafing can be when you're in your swimsuit all day long. In particular, Bush, that little yellow bikini that you've been rocking is far too tight, frankly, and this product will come in handy. You'll also find the Crop Reviver Ball Toner, a testy toner that's designed to give you a pep in your step.
Oh boy, have I needed it.
Don't ad-lib.
Subscribe to the Perfect Package and get a new blade refill for your Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer delivered to your door every 3 months. And for a limited time, subscribers get 2 free gifts. A shed travel bag of $39 value, I might add, and the patented high-performance Manscaped boxers that reduce chafing. Both of which were handy on the weekend, actually, these gifts.
So guys, through True Footy, you can get 20% off and free shipping if you simply use our code TrueFooty20, all caps, all one word, when you check out on manscaped.com. So that's 20% off and free shipping by using the code TrueFooty20. All the details you need are in the description below. Let's get into the podcast. All right, here we are back in the studio. Once again, I'm joined by Daniel Busher, who some have described as kind of the Danny DeVito of the AFL media world.
Oh, absolutely.
Whereas I'm more of a Mary J. Blige type.
I was going to say Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No, yeah, true.
Get Shorty.
Twins,
Not Get
yeah.
Shorty, whatever, yeah.
Well, we have gone for the option of standardised haircuts on True Footy now.
Yeah.
We are matching.
We're conforming with the majority of the AFL draft and
Yes.
everyone else.
Yes, never mind that
Couple
we're
of conformists
10
here.
years, 10 years older than them.
I get one every decade, it sort of seems. I had one 10 years ago.
Yeah,
I've got
true.
one now.
Well, you're going to look great at 38.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be beautiful.
No, how old are you?
37 it will be. Well, 36
Wait, how
at the
old are you?
moment. I'm 26 at the moment.
Are you? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's far too old
The next
to have
one
these
I'll be
mullets.
36 years old. Counted it myself.
Yes, very good Vernon Dursley impression.
Thank you.
How are you, Busher?
yeah, I'm going quite good, mate.
Haven't done a video together for 2 months now.
Oh, yeah, I've
think.
actually been a somewhat productive person. It's good.
Have you? What have you been up to?
Working a bit for the old boy a bit more. Hours are up, doing a bit more shit.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's been a long and miserable summer, actually. The heat here is terrible.
Oh, yeah.
It's like 38 degrees here in Perth today. And I don't know, it sucks the life out of you. It's made me not want to do anything when I'm not at work.
Yeah, it definitely makes you lethargic. It's good to get over the roto, but
Yeah.
because the last few summers over there, we haven't had a good summer like this in a while in terms of like it being really hot but like if you can't escape the heat, it's a pain in the ass.
Is that seat cooked, by the way?
This one?
Yeah, it has not stopped rattling. Do you want to know?
It's probably one of the worst ones, I guess.
Yeah. Should we switch it
I
out?
might sub him for the black one.
Alright. Story of my love life. That's good. Yeah, that sounded a little heinous. That's much better. Yeah. And a much better height.
Oh, yeah.
Much more flattering for you.
Oh, yeah, just get it
Well,
going.
as good as that filler content was talking about the weather, you can tell we're out of practice. We did actually have some good news this summer.
Yeah.
Because last week we attended Joyce's wedding.
Yep. One of the OGs.
Yeah,
It was a nice little trip.
definitely. It's it's been 4 years now since you agreed to be our cameraman for the first ever podcast. I don't know why we didn't want to spend $15 on a tripod. We thought Busher can handhold it for the whole hour. And
3 hours, wasn't it?
I think the first one was like an hour and a half. So it was a great effort. I don't think we had breaks. I don't think we stopped in that
We just
one.
charged, We didn't know about it. We're like, we have to record this all at once. It has to be one thing. We can't, if we have to, whenever someone says something foolish.
Yeah, that definitely happened. We definitely had to cut out a bit early days. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've come a long way.
Yep.
It's
We've
and it's
progressed
just-
as humans. We no longer say bad things.
Who would have thought Joycey would be the one to get his shit together first? I think we both knew that
Yeah.
was coming.
Yeah.
Nah, but congratulations to the great man. He's a co-founder of the channel. So
Yep.
Yeah, and then you'll be next, and then after
baby.
that, maybe I'll get a
Imagine.
shot. Yeah. No, you'll probably end up with kids first, and then get married down the track. That's
Yeah,
that's how
I'll
I
end
see
up
it.
with a few illegitimates.
Yeah, and then maybe some kids of your own.
Yeah, we'll get a whole brood going.
Yeah.
They can all fight to the death over my state.
Anyway, we should probably get into some football talk. There hasn't been too much football talk, has there?
Yeah, it is
because
off-season.
it's
We've
the
got
off season. Yeah, this is the longest break I've had from making videos, and I just have kind of switched off to footy. To be honest, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you been?
I haven't really followed. I've sort of like will see the Dockers sort of like day-to-day sort of crap that you usually see,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty optimistic, but I just haven't gotten to turn to it yet. Like fantasy and stuff, I haven't looked at it at all yet. Like all that. So once I start looking at that sort of stuff, it starts getting real.
Fantasy's
gotten to that
open
point
now,
yet.
so you can create your team. I
Yeah.
just did it the other day.
Yeah, I got to get onto it actually because I know I got a fantasy draft coming up next weekend.
Nice. Yeah, that's good.
I've decided my strategy is just going to be take the best player named Jack available every pick.
So it's going to be a heavily St Kilda team.
Probably.
What was it? Was it Jack's this year in this year's draft or Josh's?
A lot of Joshes this year.
Josh's year. That's right. Yeah.
Josh Shin, Josh Riccelli.
Yeah.
Probably some other Joshes I could think of off the top of my head if I wanted to.
Gibcus,
Gibcus, Goda.
Goda. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Whoever can't say one first has to drink.
So the first question we have, so this one was probably a little bit confusing. I put up an Insta post for people to contribute to a podcast like several weeks ago.
I'll say they've probably all forgotten by now.
Yeah, probably. We didn't end up filming it then. I filmed one with Druzy since. And then today we're getting to most of the questions that were posted on Instagram. Not all of them, because this is actually not going to be our season preview pod. I think we'll do that in a couple of weeks. That'll probably be the next one we do. So not every single question made it. So we might address some in the next pod, but we got through to most of the ones that are most relevant. First of which is Kristen Hogan, who basically wanted a recap of the off-season because he didn't really follow it. And that's come straight after me just saying I didn't really follow it. But what are some of the biggest stories that happened this off-season?
Probably the Degoe stuff getting settled. Like,
Yeah.
it sort of looked like that could have gone either way for a bit. But he ended up getting it done in the US justice system.
So yeah, Degoe was arrested for, was it indecent assault or no? It wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It was like just an assault, I think,
Yeah,
initially.
right.
And then they sort of downplayed it pretty much immediately. And then from there, it was a plead out sort of process.
Yeah. Lenny also chimed in with a question. He wanted to know how we thought about the way Collingwood handled the Degoe saga. Do you have any particular thoughts on that?
They probably could have been a little harder, maybe. Like, they've sort of given him the part-time at the Salvos, probably a lot of court order type stuff that was happening anyway. No, sort of like, you can't play for a few weeks, sort of.
Well, they stood him down for the
Yeah.
whole 3 months it was.
Yeah, but that doesn't, like, he could still play round one.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
I guess it's tough when we're trying to commentate when we don't really know what happened, right?
Yeah.
So that's hard. That's really hard. And at the end of the day, he wasn't charged. He wasn't guilty.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't found guilty, right?
Well, he sort of pled it to, like, just took a deal.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah, he took a deal with, like, the New York prosecutors or whatever.
I need to look this up because I don't want to say anything dumb. So the article I found here suggests that they just didn't give him a criminal conviction. So that's probably why I was getting confused.
Yeah.
But
Like
either way,
it'd be like a spent conviction, like, sort of thing where it's like, doesn't go on your record, just like
yeah.
it happened, here's a little punishment for it, but it's not going to be on your permanent record,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah, I feel kind of hard. I find it difficult to sort of commentate on it because we don't know the details of what happened, and you kind of want to assume unless he hasn't been found guilty, then Collingwood are kind of within their rights a little bit to treat it how they seem fit. There's no point them sort of sacking him if he hasn't been.
I think there's still enough conduct that's irrefutable for them to punish him for a round or two, like being out on the piss when he's supposed to be out there on a program, parading around shirtless, smashing piss at 3 a.m. in a dressing gown or whatever the hell he was doing.
And
it's not conduct becoming a footballer, really. Especially with his history.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the other part of it is that Degoe has a history of doing stuff like this. Well, not necessarily like this. Sorry, his conduct outside of the game
has been called into question too many times for this sort of stuff.
That's right.
Come up.
That's right. So it's one that it's a tricky one. I guess you could argue that Collingwood probably could have been a bit firmer around banning him for actual games.
I'm not even suggesting anything major due to like the lack of like the criminal, like that sort of side of it and the ambiguity. But there's still enough there to go. Yeah, couple games worth of suspension for being on the piss and doing stupid shit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And standing to someone down for 3 months sounds like a lot, but I guess if it's over that holiday period anyway, then it's kind of a little bit redundant. But the way it reads is that, like for reading Collingwood statements and stuff, it kind of was a suggestion that he's on his last chance.
Yeah,
you'd think.
You'd hope.
Yeah, you'd think if anything pops up, particularly around this topic, then it's going to be very hard for him to keep his spot there. So, I think we danced around that issue nicely. What else happened this off-season?
A few players with the vaccine mandate. A few players sort of popped up, like.
Yep.
The Jed Anderson, he sort of seems a bit more clear-cut. He had a bad reaction to his first shot. He's waited for Novavax and seems to be on track with that.
Well, if we were to explain it for someone who hadn't heard of that, what was going on. So there's been a couple of players that have retired because they don't want to. They're against the vaccine mandate. They don't want to get vaccinated to play.
I don't think Darling's actually retired.
I wasn't talking about Darling. I was talking about Liam Jones and Cam Ellis-Yeoman. They've retired.
I didn't realise Yeoman actually.
I
was wondering why you brought his name up. Right.
I
didn't realise he was in the camp.
Mitch Robinson was talking about it on his podcast. So decided to not get the vaccine. And then you've got Anderson, who is obviously not anti-vax because he got a jab and then he had an adverse reaction to the first one. I forget exactly what happened, but I think it might have been to do with inflammation on the heart. I'm not too sure, but it had an adverse reaction. And then understandably was concerned about getting a second one.
Yep.
I don't know exactly where that sits currently. I don't think he's made a decision either way.
I've heard the Novavax theory pretty prevalently with Anderson, because it's a less severe, supposedly, vaccine.
Yeah, I'm not too clearly on the different types of vaccines. I know someone personally that is opting for the Novavax.
So I know Novavax is protein-based rather than genetic sequencing-based or whatever. I don't know what those things mean.
I was going to say.
But protein-based sounds more conventional and normal to genetic sequencing, I imagine.
Couldn't tell you.
The uninitiated.
Yeah, but there is someone I was speaking to certainly believed that it was more effective, but it's kind of outside the scope of the True Footy podcast.
Definitely. Definitely.
We'll have a crack. Yeah. But anyway, so that's where it sits with those players. And then Jack Darling, I kind of touched on it with Druzy, but to summarise the situation there was a bit of conjecture that he hadn't been vaccinated. The media, including Ryan Daniels, said that wasn't true. Then Ryan Daniels was the one who broke the story that it was true. And I really like Ryan Daniels. It's just a funny observation.
Yeah. He always gets hung out to dry, the poor bastard. He's generally pretty spot on.
Yeah, no, he's cool. Yeah. But long story short, it sounded like Darling has been training away from the club, and it wasn't clear why he was doing that, because that sort of suggests you want to come back soon, right? Turns out he was aiming for a medical exemption. Yep. I'm not sure why. That wasn't disclosed. That was knocked back, and now his two options are to get vaccinated or to not. And then, sit out for the year and forego 75% of his contract. The prevailing rumour is that he's Novavax. He's open to Novavax, but
I've also heard the rumour that his mother-in-law is one of the major anti-vaxxers.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. That would make it awkward for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well. But it's a big blow for West Coast. That's right.
Certainly a bridge that you would have preferred to keep between the past and the future, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of maintaining your list and some consistency and stuff.
That's right. We'll see what happens. I already kind of talked about that with Drews, so we won't repeat all the implications on the Eagles. But that's kind of a summary on what's happened this summer. Was there anything else?
We
were talking before about Sam McClure's story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I thought it was a bit... I'm usually one to stick the boots in Sam McClure, to be honest, but in this particular case, I think he's been a bit hard done here.
Elaborate for those who don't know.
Him and Caroline Wilson basically co-wrote a big story about the Adelaide camp a few years ago. Everyone remembers that big kerfuffle. They sort of exposed what kind of happened in the camp as best they could with some very good sources and stuff. They'd put the hard yards in. This was a story that had taken them a lot of time. But then Collective Mind, the people who ran the camp, sued them for defamation, and then basically, because of them settling out of court, because our defamation laws are that ridiculous, you just got to cop it because they're that draconian and aimed against. They're weaponized. They're ridiculous.
Against whom?
Like whoever uses them to sue someone, like the way they're worded, it's so dubiously. If you can make the connection,
okay,
you're in
so
shit.
It's easy to sue someone for information,
especially if you've got the money to throw at it.
Yeah.
So like basically because that's happened and they've settled rather than deal with that bullshit. They've had the award taken off them for the story, and it feels a bit iffy for me.
Yeah, fair enough. I it's hard to know. I don't know too much about like journalism practices and what's okay and not. And we'll never really know how much of it was genuinely true. But you can sort of sympathise when someone like Sam McClure, cousin Sam, he like breaking stories and stuff is his career. So to get, like that would have been big for him to get rewarded for something like that. It's quite interesting. We always think of journos in this specific way, like how many people like journalists?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They cop a bad rap.
Yeah, like I even opened with, I'm usually the one sticking the boots in Sam McClure.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That sort of sums it up, the position a bit.
But they can often do important work.
Yeah.
In certain areas.
Definitely.
And, it's an interesting sort of story that's bubbled up. And
especially as the focus around sporting legs becomes more around the drama rather than the actual sport.
Yeah, that's
I've noticed that generally in sports.
Mm.
Not that I'm arguing necessarily. I do enjoy in the NBA, the transactions and the drama, and I do enjoy that side of it as well.
That's true. Chris, friend of the channel, wants to know. This is kind of an outdated question. I feel maybe it's not, but to be fair, he posted it a couple of weeks ago. But he wants to know, in our opinion, will WA clubs be spending significant times in hubs this year?
I think the times probably come where that it's starting to swing the other way, where there's more reasons for us to open. Like that, I saw yesterday actually, unemployment for the first time since everything's began, it's actually gone up.
Unemployment,
in Western Australia, and that was one of our big things, saying unemployment's gone down. We've been killing it because everything's open and consistent.
Yep.
But now we're at the point it's starting to go the other way because of the uncertainty.
Yep.
And plus, the majority of the people who actually needed the booster and to be as protected as they can be should have had it by now. So it's at the point where I think they're going to really consider opening.
I think so too. So yeah, for anyone who's not sure, it's because West Australia still has hard borders against the rest of the country, and that was pushed back from Feb 5 to it's still TBC. So there's a bit of rumours, there's a bit of conjecture that there's going to be right before round one, which is convenient for football. But I think as well, as much as anything, the fact we are starting to have our own outbreak for the first time in
triple
Perth.
digits last couple of days.
Yeah, I think in the 180 today or something like that. So the argument for keeping the border shut is weakening, right? Because it's already here. So long story short, I'm inclined to think we will actually have a relatively normal season.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could foresee, if things get really bad though, in terms of outbreaks and hospitalizations or whatever, hypothetically, would we shut our borders again, or is there any point to that?
I think once we open, especially because I think part of the reason they've forestalled openings to let the East have the worst of it, so they're in a better position to help us when shit hits the fan here.
Is that right?
I think that was part of the rationale between forestalling.
That makes sense.
To let them run through so they're fully resourced and ready to help us.
Yeah. So without making this too COVID-y, I think there's a good reason to expect that the fixture as we currently have it will remain intact.
Yeah, I'm inclined to think the same.
So, yeah. All right, let's talk some more specific football. Okay. Like I said, we're not going to do
handballing, tackling.
Yes. Yeah.
Set shots.
We're not going to really chow down into our season predictions. Like we'll do a proper pod like we did with Lenny last year soon. But we'll talk about some general questions that have come up. Beasley, for instance, wants to know, in light of the practice matches coming up, the JLT Community Series, if they even still call it that, who knows? We say this every year. I still never memorise which one it is.
Different sponsor every year.
Yeah, I remember someone roasting me in the comments for not knowing it was JLT once. It's like, what a joke. You call yourself a serious podcast because you don't know. Yeah, you got me.
Damn.
Yeah. But anyway, with the practice matches coming up, are there any players in particular you're excited to see?
Ooh. Probably, from a Freo perspective, I'd sort of like to see how Clark assimilates in the back line. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
See how quickly he's picked things up. See how good he is defensively. That supposedly was one of the knocks on him.
True. So is it half-back flank he's looking at? Yeah,
he's locked in there.
Interesting. It's an interesting sort of back six you got there now. With Hayden Young hopefully playing some more football. Griffin Logue.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to refresh myself on who got traded last year. In terms of mine, like I'll use I'll use an Eagles one.
Yep.
Brady Hoff is the one I'm excited to see, to be honest. I don't think he'll feature early.
He's just more ready to rumble sort of thing, isn't he?
Yeah.
A bit older.
I think there's a chance he'll get blooded in the preseason games. I'm sure he won't play in the first half of the AFL season, if at all. But he's one that I'm going to watch with interest because he's gone from... He's one of those players that steps up to a level before you maybe think he's physically ready and then has excelled at that next level as well. Going from, Southwest Footy League to Waffle Seniors and then, I think he had like 20 and a goal in his last game for Peel. So with that rate of improvement, I think he's got a really good skill set. I'm excited to see him. I think he's fast, skillful and takes the game on. And that's something we really, really need. Anyone else come to mind?
I'm trying to think of non-sort of like Freo-y West Coast type people.
Well, I'll go Fremantle again. I think Erasmus is the one I'm most intrigued in seeing for you guys. Where do you think he'll line up early?
Half forward flank, I think, is probably the early plan for him. A bit like kind of what they did with Petrarca early in his career.
Yeah.
Probably that sort of playbook.
Yeah, you wouldn't have thought he'd jump straight into the guts.
No, they'd probably use him as a transition as Fife starts going out of there more as he gets older or whatever. Him and Fife will... Yeah, maybe back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I'd foresee it playing out.
Mm-hmm.
Who else?
There's a couple of other draftees that I like the look of.
I've got an interesting one actually. Tim English.
Yeah.
With the rucking situation and the Bulldogs being a bit inconsistent, Steph Martin's only going to get older. They haven't really gotten what they've wanted out of Tim English and the rucks. They've sort of stopped playing him there.
Mm-hmm.
But if he can take that step at last as he continues filling out and getting older.
Yeah. Hopefully it's a really good audition for him to come to West Coast the following.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've heard West Coast are all over him. He's out of contract.
Yeah. It's not one I'm actually particularly massively keen on.
Everyone just thinks it for the knick-knack coverage.
That's I was going to say, we
just
have a clear need for a ruckman, so I'm not surprised at all West Coast are interested. You know what? I'll nominate. This is kind of a double one, but I'm intrigued to see how Hewitt and Chera will operate in that Carlton midfield and what exactly that will work with.
See if Zach Williams goes back to being a back. I think that was the plan.
Yeah, I think some mature bodies in that midfield and a very talented one in particular in Chera. The mix there is starting to take shape a little bit. As much as that pains you, I'm sure. It does. With Cripps, Walsh, and Chera and Hewitt, amongst Ed Curnow, etc. There's a few other young mids in that sort of mix, like Dow and stuff.
Yeah, O'Brien, those sort of dudes.
Yeah, so it's starting to look a little bit more formidable than it has in recent years. So I'm intrigued to see how that dynamic works, because in the last couple of years, Carlton have recruited, and those players haven't made an impact straight away. But maybe it'll click. Who knows?
Third or fourth time's the charm.
They are still pretty young.
Yeah. So every year, everyone goes, "Yeah, it's going to be the year they don't suck."
On the Carlton theme as well, I like Jesse Motlop quite a lot as a new draftee.
I'm going to go a very out of left field here one. It's an Eagles man, actually. He's not even on the list yet. Luke Stranatica.
Oh, yeah.
I was always a fan of him when he was on the Freo list, and he's probably someone you can get in for cheap who can play a role and really help you out. So it'd be interesting to see how he looks in the pre-season.
Yeah, that's true. It is. I'm wondering how... I think it's March 9th or something, the deadline for signing players. We've got 2 spots, I think. Potentially 3 with Darling.
Yeah.
With Shepherd, Venables and Darling. Potentially
like
3 inactive. With Shepherd retiring. So him and maybe Cartel would be interesting. He'd be a good shout. If he makes it onto an AFL list, I'd be very intrigued to see what Tyler Cartel can do.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, he's a West Perth full forward who... I remember in his draft year, it looked like he was going to get drafted and he didn't. So he made it through. And has been playing well in the Waffle since. So he's one of those players that AFL recruiters have been standoffish on.
But he's got a lot of runs on the board at this point.
He kicked like 70 goals last year. And I think maybe I'm making this up, but one of the last players to do that was Liam Ryan. And Liam Ryan's had a tremendous effect impact at AFL level. So I'd be interested to see how Cartel goes. But we'll go back to non-Eagles references. Josh Sin from Port Adelaide.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's one that could come in and play early. And just really adds to that really talented young mix at Port Adelaide, particularly off half-back with guys like Dersma. And I think it's Bergman is another one they've recruited in recent years. And Josh Sin adds a lot of dash and potentially play up the ground as well. But even if he just stays as a roaming defender, they got someone like Bonner as well. There's a lot of firepower in that young Port Adelaide back half, really, and across the field. They're extremely talented.
I've kind of got a duet almost. I kind of like whichever combination of them features, like the young Bulldogs key forwards like your Jamara Ugle-Hagens, your Sam Darcy's. I want to see who's winning the battle of the pecking order in that sort of group. There's even guys like Josh Bruce and stuff still hanging around down there. Norton, they're still playing him as a forward.
Bruce has done his ACL.
Oh, he did that early last year, though, didn't he?
No, he did it in the last round, didn't he?
Oh, shit, did he? I thought he did it early in the year and he was going to be due to
No, they lost to Essendon right before the finals.
Fuck,
I think I'm remembering that correctly. I'm so hazy with football, and I'm pretty certain that's right.
Yeah. But yeah, he won't be back until some stage, if he's back at all.
I think Callahan's a good shout as well for someone who could come in as a midfielder and probably go be a real contender for the Rising Star.
Yeah, definitely.
And Dacos and Horn-Francis, who's not excited to see what those two can do?
Yeah, definitely.
For North Melbourne and Collingwood.
They're both pretty bloody prodigious.
Yeah, the top two picks from last year. So the next question we've got is it's along a similar sort of vein, Bush. It's from the Barrel AFL, and it's 5 players you think will break out.
Ooh.
Okay, so this is ideally not necessarily 18, 19-year-olds. I guess it could be. But first-year players don't really break out in their first year, right? So we're talking about players who have maybe been bubbling away, showing a bit of potential, but haven't taken their game to the next level. Is there anyone that comes to mind, or do you want a minute because you haven't?
LDU's just sort of a name that popped into my mind that sort of fits the bill.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know if he'd necessarily be my first nomination, but he's sort of like the profile of the guy you expect to be in that position, and he has the tools.
Definitely. I think he's a player that North's rebuild kind of hinges on a little bit, and I do think they've got a lot of good young talent around there. Taron Thomas is another player that I'll mention. Simpkin's been around for a few years, but he's still young and very, very good. Stevenson and guys like Powell and now Horn-Francis. But I do think having someone like LDU fulfill his potential is going to be really important to North, having a point of difference in that midfield. And I think he's got a lot of potential.
He's a high ceiling sort of dude.
Definitely.
Sure.
So I hope he makes it, to be honest. I hope he cracks
It's always good to see more talent.
Taron Thomas is another player that's very, very good. And again, in terms of skill set, offers something very, very different. As a tall inside-out midfielder who's explosive. So good.
Another one that's going to pay me to say is, we're just talking about him, Chera probably, because he was sort of bubbling at Freo, and it was going to happen at Freo. It's probably going to happen at Carlton.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Was he getting a lot of on-ball minutes at the end of his career at Fremantle?
Not as much as you'd expect, but he was getting a pretty good run.
I wonder if that, just by virtue of him playing more time on ball as a genuine first-choice midfielder versus, I've always felt like he was maybe a little bit behind a Brayshaw.
Yeah. Even Sarong probably overtook him, yeah.
So, I mean, he's got Walsh and Cripps, obviously, but I still think he's going to be sort of elevated to that role, and it'll be interesting to see how he goes.
Because there's no Monday Fife types that are still worthy of the time in there. He's going to get the time.
That's right. I'll throw out a couple. Lockie Ash from GWS showed a lot of potential on a halfback flank for them at times last year, and I think he could be a regular 30 possession a game player with his damaging ball use as well. I think he's not too far off.
He had games like it last year, but he was a bit up and down in the performances. Whereas there's I'll compare him to Isaac Cumming, who's also in that back line. Cumming's ceiling wasn't nearly as high as Ash's, but his floor was sort of he had that sort of consistent middle, whereas Ash had one of those iffier games, and he'd have a monster game. Yeah. Bit more stock fluctuation because he's young, obviously.
That's right. It was his second. No, it wasn't his first. He was 2019 draft, I think. The same year as Hayden Young. Was that 2019?
Yeah.
Yeah. So second
third year now.
Going to his third, So, about ready. I think Sarong is still potentially a breakout player next year. I mean, you could argue he broke out last year, but he just seems to... I feel like he'll go another step.
Yeah, he's even talking like he's got that step.
He's in your leadership group now.
Yeah. He's very driven young man.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things everyone sort of says like the Andy Brayshaw is like the logical next choice for captain, but it almost feels like Sarong's would get the boys vote more, versus Brayshaw would get like the public perception, doing all that side of shit. Even though they're both fucking outstanding.
Well, they could either co-captain or evidently...
Yeah, I've heard the co-captain mentioned once or twice, like people just sort of going, that'd be nice.
It's not a bad shout. Yeah, and it's player voted anyway, so that would give Sarong a good chance if you're right with that. A player from Hawthorn I really like the potential of is Will Day.
Yeah.
He kind of bolted in his draft year, and there's always a sense, at least for me, with Hawthorn bolt on a kid, I'm just like,
they're going to be good.
He's probably going to be good.
Yeah, you trust them.
You trust them, and they don't actually necessarily nail the draft more than any other club, but they do have a history of nailing certain picks,
and usually have a culture and able to fit in culture and put them in the position to succeed.
Yeah,
so that's the thing you see a lot in drafts generally, is just like fit and where you end up and depth and stuff.
That's right. But in Will Day's case, I think what he's shown at AFL level is also very good. There's another sort of rangy halfback that uses the ball really well. I think he's a Hawthorn player. He just seems like a Hawthorn player. And Jai Caldwell was another player as well who started his career at Essendon last year quite strongly. Looked like he was going to be quite a player, and then did his hammy, I think it was. If it wasn't his hammy, it was some lower leg injury, and missed a lot of football and really lost his momentum. But I think he could be another breakout player, definitely.
Yeah, they needed that bigger sort of mid, but because they got a lot of littler dudes like Merritt, Parrish. Mm-hmm. Even though they can extract, particularly Parrish, they just sort of needed that bigger ball.
Yeah, definitely. Lukosius maybe from Gold Coast. I think he's kind of steadily been building. So whether or not he takes a massive leap this year or not, I think a lot will depend on how Gold Coast perform as a team.
Yeah, and Keys take that time naturally as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think they're talking about him playing forward this year as well.
Probably with Ben King going down.
Yeah, I think even before the Ben King thing, they were talking about that. So, interesting. And they just drafted Mac Andrew. Yep. That's right. I was thinking they were drafted Gibkiss, but they didn't in the end, did they?
It was the Mac Daddy.
Exactly. That'll be exciting. Another player I'm excited to see, actually.
To see, because he's very raw, to see how well he translates this early. It's going to be interesting.
I don't know how early.
I think pre-season will be the best spot to see it, realistically. So I don't think the body's probably quite there. I
agree. So he might be a second year sort of type.
Yeah.
But regardless, it'd be interesting to see if he cracks a pre-season game. K Taylor 6 wants to know the teams looking to break into the 8. So I'm not sure if he's asking us to identify which teams can break into the 8.
Huh?
So the teams that missed the 8 last year: North, Crows, Suns, Pies, Hawks, Carlton, West Coast, Fremantle, Sydney. St Kilda and Richmond. So let's break those into teams that we think can make it and teams that won't make it. So I think the Suns are just about out, the least likely of that. The Pies, for me, are also on the outskirts of there. And then I'd probably group Hawthorn, North and Crows as being very unlikely, but still possible. Yeah. Both have their potential.
If everything goes right, they make the 8. Yeah. That's probably the category, if everything goes right.
I would still probably have them a little category below, to be honest, the other teams.
But like, if everything goes right, it insinuates if it's everything perfect, and then the other teams have their issues as well. Yeah.
I would argue that Carlton, personally, is more likely, I feel, to make the 8 than any of the teams I just mentioned.
Yeah, they're above that.
You agree?
They're the next tier above, yeah.
I think they can make the 8 this year.
Yeah.
I think it's quite possible.
Yep.
With their list demographic, their recruits who they've recruited the last couple of years, recruits often take time to gel, and they've traded in a big part of their best 22 with Williams and Sarden. Another one that's escaping me. They traded in 3 last year.
Not McGov.
No, not McGov.
Ages ago.
Yeah, I'm forgetting who it was. Doesn't matter. But Chera and Hewitt this year as well. There's been a history of trading in players. Jack Martin was who I was thinking of, actually. Or maybe Jack Martin was the year before. It doesn't matter. The point being, I think Carlton are demographically ready to improve.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I think both of our clubs are in this group that can look to make the 8. We might have differing views on West Coast, and that's fine, but I've made my views clear this off-season. I think we can, and I think we will make the 8, to be honest, because I'm biased.
I don't know about will, but I will say can make the 8. They're definitely in that category, same as Freo, probably same as Carlton.
Yeah.
Probably. Actually, Richmond's probably a tier above if we're trying to tier these.
Yeah,
in
so
the
that's an
finals
interesting
groups.
one. So you think Richmond do you think they're more than likely to make the 8 next year? Yeah. I think that's fair. They've had a lot of injuries.
And it's going to be a normal year. Most of their games back in Melbourne, full capacity.
Mind you, that didn't phase them in 2020.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't think that's an issue for them. I think it was injuries just literally broke the back of their season, to be honest.
And that.
They still, in flashes, look like a very good footy team.
Yeah.
Up close, I saw them in the Dreamtime game. And Essendon played well, but it just seemed like...
Yeah, they steamrolled them at the end in that game.
Richmond had all the answers. And they looked pretty good against West Coast in that game. I'm referencing these 2 games because they were in Perth and I was at both of them. But yeah, at moments, they just... I think there's still enough bubbling away there. Whether or not they've got the hunger to go all the way for the flag, I'm not too sure. But I think they will probably play finals, to be honest.
Yeah.
And St Kilda as well can be a bit of a forgotten team.
St Kilda's probably in the Carlton Western Australian teams category.
I think I rate them a little bit higher than you do. I think there's a lot of ability there, to be honest. I think
there's a lot of capacity to fuck up as well.
They really do. It's hard to put your finger on why, because it's not the first time in the last 5 years or so they've had an encouraging year and then failed to back that up. And part of that is I don't know if their list is considered young across the board, but there is a fair few young kids in that 22. I feel like.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong on that. It just feels like they're...
Yeah. And someone went down, I think. They had a big injury. Was it Caulfield?
Yes, Caulfield's done his ACL, I think. So he's out for the year. That is a blow. That is a blow. But I still think finals mix for them, to be honest.
They're in the mix. Like I said, same sort of category as Freo, West Coast, Carlton.
Fair enough. Yeah, but you think Richmond above that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope that answers the question. I personally think there's 5 teams that I think are very quite unlikely, and the other 5 are chances.
Yeah.
But logic and history would suggest that one of the 5 teams I've listed as definitely won't make it.
Yeah.
It's always a team from the bottom 4. Often a team from the bottom 4 will come up and make the 8. So, yeah.
Who's most likely out of that bottom group? Just as a little distinction for the best of the worst, we'll call it.
I am torn between Adelaide and Hawthorn.
I'm torn between Adelaide and North Melbourne.
See, I think North Melbourne looked encouraging at times, but there was only 4 wins at the end of the day, and they were against a really struggling West Coast. There was Carlton in there, and I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to but I just think there's a big jump to finals. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
We're talking finals as 13 wins.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the biggest shock, but I personally would favour Hawthorn and Adelaide.
Adelaide probably the pick, I'd say then.
The thing with Adelaide is that they really, really turned it on in moments last year, and to a greater extent than North Melbourne did. Adelaide knocked off Melbourne, and in round 1 they beat Geelong, and admittedly that's with Tex Walker playing the form of his life. But there's still a lot of organic improvement in that team, I feel. And then Tex Walker's going to be back this year anyway, so maybe he plays well. So
back and less racist than ever.
You'd hope so, frankly.
Yeah, bloody oath.
Cool. Got a few more questions here. Flag D's wants to know our thoughts on Luke Jackson's potential. Could he potentially become the best player in the league? This is a good one for you. You're a big fan of Luke Jackson.
I'm a bit biased on this one. Basketball man, but he's Freo man, but what reason don't I have to think this guy's going to be awesome in terms of my biases, but he's actually sort of shown more than I expected earlier. Because I knew coming in as a high draft pick, he was raw as anything.
Yeah.
But he's progressed far quicker than I thought. And even you heard some Melbourne players say he helped turn that grand final on its head.
Yeah, that's right. Who said that?
It was a few the Petrarca, Brayshaw types.
Yeah.
Once they switched Gawn out and put him in, it was something different because teams were just Gawn's going to win the ruck. Let's just try and counter that. Rather than Luke Jackson making it a live ruck and giving Melbourne's guys more chance to break out rather than teams just being preemptively defensive because Gawn's so good.
Yeah. I think he's got that sort of Grundy potential.
Yeah. Get around the ground, get possessions.
Yeah.
He can.
It's hard to say could he be the best player in the league. Since I've been following football, I don't think the best player in the league's ever been a ruckman. But then again, that's a completely subjective question. People might think that Max Gawn or Champion Data think it's Nick Nat Nui, the best players in the comp. But But yeah, actually, we didn't even address the champion data question.
Oh, the elite.
Yeah. So every year, champion data releases its not subjective. Its list of players that it deems elite. But the thing is that what they don't do is really demonstrate any of the working out or algorithm that goes into it. So we're kind of left with bizarre outcomes with no real explanation. So it can only lead to criticism. But I think it's if you're in the top 10% of your position.
Yeah.
But there's some odd names up there. So
metrics, because it's like some of the metrics they use. Like I think, like for example, Sam Swiatkowski. I think he makes it purely just because he's so high in the pressure metric.
Yeah, that's right. Whereas as a small forward, he only kicked 9 goals last year. So it's like, well, is your algorithm
and he was
right?
in and out of the team.
Yeah. For West Coast, it was Nat Nui and Liam Ryan.
Yep.
And that actually on the surface makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we have more elite players than that, but they have barely played football over the last 2 years, so I'm not surprised that they haven't made the list. Who was your other one? Swiatkowski and Sean Darcy.
Yeah.
Sean Darcy, that makes sense.
Definitely.
Who is some other weird ones? Jeremy Finlayson was one of the biggest surprises. He is a very productive footballer, though. Like, he translates his impact through stats. Like, he kicks goals.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Although no one really consider him elite. But, I mean, is he a key forward?
From
that's a weird one. There was a couple of weird Hawthorn ones. Who was the other
Scrimshaw?
one? Scrimshaw, yeah. I mean, decent player, but So are they categorising Finlayson as medium forward or tall forward? Because he doesn't really play
that's
like
what
a key.
I'm sort of like, he's not quite a key.
Yeah.
Because they have Charlie Dixon and Alir as keys for their elite.
Yeah, right.
At each end, yeah.
Elite.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, those are hard to argue with. Any other weirdos? I meant weird ones.
Zach Williams, considering how he played in the midfield last year, wasn't that great. Surprised he stacked up as elite.
Doesn't really add up.
Jack Sinclair's the only elite player for the Saints.
Yeah, strange one. Not a bad player, but...
Yeah.
Oh, but and no, Jack Steele was probably the meaningful one. Gawn didn't make the list. Papley.
Yeah.
Strange.
Yeah.
Anyway. Heath wants to know, how will the football world cope with a 5-year plus Swans dynasty starting this year?
The novelty... I like them at the moment, but I think the novelty of them would probably wear off by about the third or fourth one. I'd probably start cracking the shits with them.
I think the difference between... one big factor in the difference between them being a really, really good team or just a good team is Logan McDonald.
Yeah.
I think to have a Logan McDonald on their list is a massive, massive asset.
Oh, yeah.
When you have a potentially... Well, some people say he was the best key forward of that draft. Other people say it was Tilthorpe. But the raps on this young kid, if you can get it like a potentially, I don't know, Josh Kennedy, I say that as an Eagles fan because he comes to mind, but a Jack Rewalt quality.
He hasn't signed yet, interestingly. Logan
McDonald?
Nah.
Yeah, that's true.
Both WA teams are whispering very hard in his ear.
That's
whispering
a weird
sweet
image.
nothings.
Come over to Perth.
We've got cookies.
Interesting. Yeah, it remains to be seen whether it'll be a dynasty, but I think a lot will hinge on... I know it's kind of a facetious question. I know we're probably over-answering the question here, but I do think that McDonald is a key pillar in that. They have a lot of other quality, but having a key forward that could potentially, win you flags, that's
especially as Buddy sails into the sunset.
That's right. Simon wants to know which AFL teams will be overrated and underrated this year. So a way of breaking that down is teams that are hyped to improve that you don't agree with, and teams that are probably hyped to fall down the ladder that you don't agree with. So who do you think is a little bit overrated by the AFL media community?
Ooh.
I think you can chat the Swans in there, to be honest.
Probably.
I don't feel strongly about it, but if we're talking about teams that are hyped to move up, they're one of the only teams that people are all sort of suggesting they'll go up. Some people suggesting they'll win the flag, top 2, whatever. I'd probably say that's a little bit early for them. That's all I would say. I don't think they're overrated, but I just think it's not going to come as quickly as people are suggesting.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's hard to think of a team to really label as overrated, really.
There's a lot of optimism around North. I wouldn't say overrated. But because
people still think they're going to suck probably for a couple more years.
Yeah. Essendon?
That was sort of the first team that popped into my head, but even they felt a little too harsh.
It does.
But I feel like they are the most likely to drop out of the 8.
It is a loaded question. Underrated, overrated. It is a loaded question. It seems disrespectful. That being said, I think Essendon are one of those teams that will probably stabilise for a little bit. I don't think they have another jump in them this particular year.
Definitely not. I think if anything, it's a slight fall down.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you had someone like Parrish bob up and play to an elite standard last year. Are they going to find that level of improvement again on top of that? Not this year, I don't think. Underrated?
Ooh, underrated.
So a team that people think is either not really a contender or to plummet, but you think could.
I don't know how people are rating GWS at this point.
That was who I had as well.
Yeah, but they've still got a lot of quality on their list.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think people are talking them as a genuine contender, but I agree with that. I think there's enough talent and like ready-made quality there, and a blend of up and coming 18-year-olds, Finn Callaghan, Lockie Ash that we talked about. I think there's enough there.
Jesse Hogan's going to pan out for them because of course he is.
Well, if he does, if he does, then that's the difference between 7th and 4th maybe. So I agree with that. I've been saying that the Eagles are overly predicted to go really far down the ladder, whereas I think we'll be around the mark for 8th. But and Geelong as well. I think people have written them off a little bit. They just do this every year. And it's because of they had a lackluster final series.
But they tend to have some lackluster final series every now and again.
Yeah. That being said, I still think they're, they could win the flag.
Yeah.
Whereas
sure.
I don't feel like a lot of people are saying that, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right, we'll rattle off a couple of. We have a few more questions, but we might push them into the next one. But we'll finish off with some fun ones. Mitch Buttsworth wants to know headlines that we might see by the bye rounds.
Ooh. Voss is not the boss.
Sacked in. Did that just come to your mind because it's like it rhymes?
Yeah, catchy headline. Plus, I was trying to think of anything bad about Carlton I could. Capture.
Well, on that theme, I could see Jew being turfed mid-year with no Ben King.
Because I did hear something interesting. Alistair Clarkson has been telling people he'll be coaching, not the season that's about to happen, but the following one. Yeah,
so I don't know if it was confirmed that was Clarkson. I think they said it was an assistant. It was a coach that was coaching last year and isn't this year. So that also opened up to be Nathan Buckley and somebody else that's escaping me. That being said, it would make sense if it's Clarkson. So I actually had written down here Clarkson, the new Gold Coast coach, takes over from Dew.
Yeah, they were putting the work in, I think, a little bit, Gold Coast.
Yeah, and it would make sense. And it'd be very interesting to see if they can recruit people to Gold Coast to play for Clarkson. And what kind of players would go there. That would be interesting to me.
Ooh, yeah.
I reckon he'd probably load up on a couple of vets.
Yeah.
And then hopefully a couple of young guns as well. It's like a real AFL Evolution 2 career idea.
Ooh, yeah.
Rebuilding Gold Coast with Clarkson. Jordan Moritz wants to know big calls / predictions that are unlikely to happen. So this is still kind of along the similar sort of vein to the Mitch Buttsworth question. But what's like a big call that probably won't happen? But
mine, I've had this one in my mind from the beginning. It's towards my own team, but I'm going to say if everything goes right for Fremantle, top 4 could happen.
Jeez.
If everything goes right. That's a big caveat for Fremantle.
You certainly tick the box of probably won't happen there.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I like the optimism.
But it's like if we had a full year with our backline fully healthy, all the kids progress as well as they possibly can. There's a lot of caveats on that for sure. But if the planets align, I think we've got it in us.
Fair enough. Mine was kind of more of actually another headline, but I put, towards the end of the year or mid-year, we'll see a headline that Giants flag hopes accrual by injuries. So the Giants will be like one of the best team and then just get rabid by injuries. I feel like they so often do.
Recurring thing.
So they might see them slide down a little bit. So that's kind of my big call, is that the Giants will be one of the better teams. And then,
fade away.
Tim Taranto won't play. Lockie Whitfield won't play. Toby Green's missing the first 5 weeks.
Yeah. He'll get suspended another 5 weeks somewhere in there probably.
Exactly. Well, I think that's probably it for now.
Yeah.
done 2 podcasts in 2 weeks and I'm knackered, to be honest. I've done nothing since. Nothing in between. But it has been good to be back in the studio with you for the first time in like 10 weeks.
Get the reps going. We've got the season coming up in a month and a half or whatever it is.
I know. It's gonna be a tougher year. I'm a busier man than I used to be. Yep. But we'll certainly be back for we'll do a pre-season podcast.
Yep.
Probably somewhere between JLT and round 1.
Yeah, you need a little bit of JLT to add some context.
Definitely. So that'll be good. Looking forward to it. And stay tuned. So.
And JLT's nuts.
Yes, well said. And just a reminder as well, if you're watching this on YouTube, that we are also available on Spotify and all your podcast apps as well. So thanks, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.
Absolutely.